Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today and welcome to the Canadian Solar Industries Association Introduction to Networks Forum and Webinar. My name is Wes Johnston, Vice President of CanSIA. I will be your host for today's webinar. Before we get into the core presentation, I will ask Kayla D'Souza to go over a few technical items and to provide instructions on how participants can get involved in the webinar. Kayla.
Thanks, Wes. Hello, everyone. Upon joining the webinar, you should have seen a pop-up titled Audio Connection as shown on the slide. We recommend choosing the Call Using Computer option if possible. You are able to use your phone and specify I will call in, but please note that the dial-in number provided is not toll-free. If you chose to call in but would like to use your computer instead, please click Communicate from the top menu bar and select Audio Connection. You can switch to your computer from here. You should now be seeing a PowerPoint presentation that CanSIA panelists will be sharing and controlling. Please note that this presentation, as well as an audio recording of the webinar, will be made available in the coming days. Throughout the presentation, CanSIA panelists will conduct 2 question and answer sessions. You can type in your question under the Q&A tab, which is shown on the right side of the slide and will also be on the right side of your screen. If you only see the presentation on your screen, you can hover your cursor over the top. You will see a small bar with options there. Q&A is on the far right. You simply click to open. To ask a question, simply type your question in the text box and click Send. Please ensure you have the Ask All Panelists option chosen from the drop-down menu when entering your question. We will respond verbally to as many questions as possible. If we've reached the end of the webinar and have not answered your question, CanSIA's Business Development and Member Relations Manager, Lisa Hatina, will follow up with you directly after the webinar. You may have been prompted to enter the event password and access code upon joining the meeting. These details are important, and we suggest that you note them now in case you get disconnected during the webinar. If this happens, you can consult the details you've noted and rejoin quickly to ensure you don't miss any important content. If at any point during the webinar you are having technical issues or have any technical questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. My contact details are shown on the slide. I can be reached directly at 866-522-6742, extension 221. Thank you. I'll now pass it back to Wes to get started.
Thank you very much, Kayla. So the agenda for today's webinar is as follows. First, we will have John Gorman, CanSIA's President and CEO, giving opening remarks regarding the purpose of today's webinar and also providing some global and national context for our conversation, as well as providing some additional background information on how CanSIA has transformed itself, particularly over the last 12 months. Second, we will have Lisa Hatina, who will introduce in greater detail the CanSIA networks and forums, describing what a network and forum is, how it works, and how to get involved. After that portion of the webinar, as Kayla mentioned, we will open it up for 2 minutes to answer any questions from the participants. Next, CanSIA's expert team will provide information updates on some of the exciting activities and opportunities within our new networks. At that point, we will also take a few minutes to answer questions from the panelists, from presenters, or rather from participants who have questions regarding policy, regulatory, or communication matters. Lastly, we will wrap things up, go over a few next steps before ending the webinar. So before handing it over to John Gorman, our President and CEO, for his opening remarks to provide some background, John has over 20 years of sustainability infrastructure experience and is also the Canadian representative on the International Energy Agency Executive Committee, providing him with a great global perspective. John also has a solar PV system on his family home. John, over to you.
Thank you, Wes. I find it interesting you chose those 2 things to focus on. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much on behalf of the whole team here at CanSIA for taking some time to participate in our webinar. The purpose of today's call is to present an overview of CanSIA's networks and forums, which is our new member engagement and consultation process. So CanSIA's networks and forums will be replacing the caucus and working group model that we've used for the past 5 years. And the intent of the network and forums is to enable CanSIA to be more effective and impactful, to improve and sustain membership engagement, to communicate CanSIA policy activities in effective and transparent manners, to allow for targeted communications, and to optimize both CanSIA members and the CanSIA's time. We recognize how precious a resource your time is, and we have taken these steps to restructure our engagement and consultation process with you to make sure that we're using it in the most effective way. My role this afternoon is to provide some context for our discussion, and I'd like to start maybe at the highest level, perhaps with some global context. Firstly, you know, the global market fundamentals for solar energy are strong, and they're getting stronger. Last year, there was $265 billion invested globally in renewable energy, which is more than double that of what was invested in fossil fuel electricity generation. And more than half of that $265 billion worth of investment was put into solar. So solar is emerging and has been now for 4 years as the leading technology in terms of investment. And we're also seeing that the investment community and the leading agencies and think tanks are projecting that these investments in renewable energy will continue at quite a dramatic rate, projected to hit $8 trillion annually by 2040. And solar is going to represent more than half of that, a $4 trillion market. So that should give all of us some real confidence about the global context we're operating in. And these same bodies are the ones that are projecting that within the next 25 years, solar energy is going to be the dominant source of electricity technology on the planet. So part of this, obviously, is economics. Solar energy is becoming increasingly cost competitive in jurisdictions around the world, and it helps that interest rates are at record lows, which is helping with the whole financing regime. But I think the other interesting part to this, to the growth of solar, is how climate policy is now growing and is becoming a driver of electricity planning. You know, this is a relatively new dynamic that we've experienced here in Canada. We always used to compete on an energy planning perspective, and now climate policy has taken a front seat and is, by extension, driving electricity planning. And so CanSIA, as your trade organization, has been getting very actively involved in climate policy discussions in provinces across Canada, and we are now gearing up to do that at the federal level. So the global fundamentals are strong and they're growing, and here in Canada we've set ambitious targets for ourselves. Many of you will have participated in the exercise we did late last year to come up with our new vision for the industry, which is called Roadmap 2020. And the goals in there are to see 6.3 gigawatts of installed capacity by 2020. To see 65,000 job years created, and to reduce GHG emissions by 1.5 million tons. So the roadmap, which is available on the website if you haven't looked at it in detail yet, has 5 areas of focus to achieve this. And I think that the networks and forums are going to be a key tool for us as we move forward to ensure that we're reaching those ambitious goals. Now, how are we actually doing today in Canada in terms of solar installations and these goals we're striving for? I'd say that we're in striking distance of hitting our targets, and that our prospects have improved dramatically over the recent months because of the climate policy discussions and because of the election of certain governments in provinces across Canada and the new federal government. On a jurisdiction-by-jurisdiction basis, Ontario is holding its own. It's on course with its scheduled procurements, and we see some significant opportunity developing potentially around the nuclear refurbs and gas that might be brought into the mix and other technologies at that time to ensure that we've got a diversified, stable electricity source. So there's more opportunity there. Many of you may also have seen last night's announcement by Premier Brad Wall in Saskatchewan, which has committed to achieving 50% renewables by 2030 by an installed capacity measure. And this is very welcome news by our industry, of course, and I think partly the result of the work that we've been doing over the last months with Sask Power and with the government of Saskatchewan. In Alberta, we are expecting a major announcement early next week that will be laying out their entire climate policy plan, but will, at this point, I can say with quite a high degree of confidence, be figuring aggressive targets for the phase-out of coal-fired generation, for bringing in new renewable energy, and for treating solar electricity as a key part of that solution. We've been working very closely with the Wind Energy Association in Alberta and have in fact been put in a joint policy presentation and have been promoting it jointly. New Brunswick is also showing movement in their introduction recently of their 100-megawatt community program, and of course the federal government opportunity to start providing a backdrop and kick-starting some of the slower-moving provinces is a real prospect for us now. When we went through this exercise with many of you of plotting out the Roadmap 2020 and our objectives, we recognized that we needed to be a more proactive, more focused organization, and that we needed more robust channels for interacting with our members. So working with the board, we began a very deliberate transformation of CanSIA, and I'd like to just take a minute to tell you about the progress that we've been making on that front over the last 10 months. Really a cornerstone of rebuilding CanSIA into a stronger, more effective organization on your behalf was divesting ourselves of the majority of our conference and trade show responsibilities. And so we partnered with one of the world's largest trade show and conference companies based in Germany, Hanover Fairs, to give them not only a controlling portion of that part of the business, but to allow us to maintain control of the things that we know are important to the members around programming, etc. But really what bringing in a partner has done for us on this front is it's allowed us to refocus and better serve you with the small staff that we have. It was very distracting to be organizing 3 or 4 different conferences a year with the staff that we have here at CanSIA, when really we know that you want us focusing on policy and research and communications and opening new markets. And we have achieved that with the Hanover partnership. It has also allowed us, and this is significant, to reduce the accumulated historic deficit that we had from previous years and build up a stronger team here at CanSIA with greater focus on member services and member relations, communications, policy and market development, and regulatory affairs. It's also allowed us to make some significant investments in IT upgrades. So we are in the process now of building a new customer relationship management system, which will be live in Q1 and Q2 of next year. We're rebranding CanSIA and creating a new website which will be more friendly and offer better information for all of you, which will also be launched in the first half of 2016. And lastly, we have revamped our membership structure. We've kept the fees the same, as you know, but we have added more focus and I think better value to each of the membership categories. And we've established for the first time something called strategic initiatives, which are geared towards doing something that CanSIA has never had the luxury of doing before, and that is working proactively to deal with future issues, the issues that we know we're going to need 3, 4, 5 years from now to ensure that we've got a sustainable and robust industry in this country. And I have to give a shout out to those of you on the call today who are members of those strategic initiatives. It's your dollars and your time which are funding the research and the policy on these long-term issues, these future-reaching issues for the benefit of the whole industry. And we never could have tackled that without your help. And that brings me to the introduction of the network and forum structures. So as I mentioned, this is a much improved, in our view, mechanism for communicating and collaborating with the entire membership. It's a strong channel for dealing with the critical and pressing issues that we deal with on a daily basis to ensure that the details of here and now are being dealt with properly. And that, of course, is the purpose of the call today, and we'll be getting into lots of detail. Lastly, I'd like to acknowledge our board of directors, our volunteer board of directors, who dedicate their time and their experience to directing our organization and representing the membership at large around important decisions. And for those of you who have not voted yet for the new board, which will change over just after Solar Canada on December 8th and 9th, the closing deadline is Monday, November 23rd, this coming Monday at 5 p.m. We've greatly streamlined the process for voting, so you can do it online now, and we encourage you to cast your vote to ensure that we continue to have a strong and representative board of directors. And with that, Wes, I'll pass it back to you to lead us through the next parts of the webinar.
Thank you very much, John. So as I mentioned, I'm the Vice President of CanSIA. I've been with CanSIA now for about 9 years, actually. I'm responsible for strategic planning, finance, and operations. And during this time, I've had the great pleasure of working with a number of great colleagues. And at this point in time, I would like to introduce the rest of the CanSIA team. Patrick Bateman is our Director of Market Intelligence and Research, and possibly has the coolest title here at CanSIA. He has almost a decade of renewable energy sector experience and has been with CanSIA since 2009. He's a key member of our team, and over that time, he has worked on a number of important files and different factors and matters, including policy, research, and analytics, and regulatory matters. Ben Weir is our Director of Policy and Regulatory Affairs. Ben is our newest member of the CanSIA team, joining us in May of 2015, and he has been a key contributor to the team ever since. He previously worked in lead policy roles at the OPA and the IESO, and at CanSIA he is primarily focused on Ontario energy sector activities. Lou Hood is our Director of Member Relations and Communications. Lou joined us earlier this year as well, and she brings a wealth of experience and knowledge in communications, but also in the energy and electricity sector. She is focused on developing and implementing the CanSIA communication strategy, which we're all very excited about here at CanSIA, and we're already seeing some results. Lisa Hatina is the Manager of Business Development and Member Relations. She is your first point of contact for existing and prospective members. She has been with CanSIA for over a year now, and previously she has gained experience in energy, climate, and sustainability matters. Next, we have Kayla D'Souza. She is our Administrative and Communications Coordinator. She is an invaluable member of the CanSIA team since joining us in 2013, and helps to keep everything moving smoothly here at CanSIA and keeping us all on track. And last but not least, Sharon Chester is our Conference and Events Coordinator. She has been with CanSIA for over 10 years, and many of you who know Sharon, you know that she brings a very cheerful nature to all of the events and social gatherings that we have here at CanSIA. For all of those who do know the CanSIA team, you know that we do work very hard and we're very passionate about solar energy. And it truly is an honor for us to work on behalf of our membership to grow the industry here in Canada, to make solar energy a more significant part of Canada's energy mix. So now at this point in time, I will hand it over to Lisa Hatina, who will describe CanSIA's new networks and forums in greater detail, how they work, how CanSIA members can get involved, and following her presentation, we will provide an opportunity for participants to ask questions. Over to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Wes. So we're going to get into some more granular detail here about what we're introducing you to with the networks and forums. So in the next few slides, I'm going to give you an overview of how these networks and forums will work, and also how members can participate in them. And first off, I'd like to say that the new networks are being made available to our members so they can access the information that is of most interest and is most useful to them. And since participation is voluntary, we're really counting on our members to sign up for the networks that are of most interest. So to give a little bit more definition to the networks and forums, there will be 3 CanSIA networks, which will group professionals representing our member companies based on a shared area of interest that they have. And the forums that we will be implementing will be opportunities for groups of people within those networks to volunteer their time to work through a specific industry issue. So the first network I'll talk about is the Policy and Market Development Network, which will be of interest to those functioning in a policy development, government relations, or business development role, and will focus on issues affecting the market for solar energy across Canada. Topics featured in this network will include policy development to do with energy and the environment, information and issues affecting electricity markets, and supply mix planning, and also how renewables are procured by electricity providers. The Utility and Regulatory Affairs Network will deal more with preparing utilities and the regulatory environment for the solar future. This network will be of interest to technical professionals who interface between the solar industry and utilities. The network will exchange information on distributed generation programs, rate design and cost recovery mechanisms, best practices for interconnection, and innovations in technology that impact either the feasibility or the preference for solar as an electricity source, such as storage. The third network is a communications network that we expect to be joined by mostly communications professionals representing our member companies. This network will be led by Lou Hood, CanSIA's Director of Member Relations and Communications, and the network will support the other 2 networks from a communications perspective, but the group comprising that network will collaborate on issues management, reactive media relations, which Lou will explain a few minutes later, earned media, industry media relations, and content development. To give you an idea of what you can expect after joining one or more networks, those who sign up will receive a monthly e-news, will be invited to attend 3 to 4 webinars per year, and will have the opportunity to review position papers or other documents before they go out, such as recommendations made to government advisory panels. And to give you a sense of what would be communicated through the networks, this could include policy recommendations made through our strategic projects so they can be vetted by a broader section of our membership before going out, research impacting solar markets in Canada, research impacting policy positions, and also details on CanSIA's collaboration with other organizations, for instance, our collaboration with CanWIA in providing recommendations to Alberta's Climate Change Advisory Panel. So by signing up for a network, you'll also be included in any invitations that go out to members to participate in forums. Forums will replace working groups, and as John was mentioning earlier, the idea is to make better use of our members' time and to find solutions to problems and hash out ways to make the most of any opportunities that come up. These forums will be created and dissolved as issues arise and will each have a specific goal in mind. So once that goal is met, the forum will dissolve. Chairing opportunities will be available, as with working groups in the past, to our Corporate 1 and Corporate 2 members. And CanSIA's executive team will propose the objectives and meeting schedule or work plan to the forum, depending on the specific forum's purpose and objectives, and that will be vetted by the forum in the introductory call. So a few criteria have been put in place to put some parameters around what types of issues will require a forum. Any of the following would justify setting up a forum for a particular issue. The issue could have near-term implications for the broader industry, could represent a near-term opportunity or challenge for our membership, or could be set up because CanSIA requires member collaboration, engagement, and consultation to prepare an industry position on a policy or regulatory matter. So just to be clear about the difference between forums and strategic projects, which John was mentioning earlier, the most important differentiator is that the forums will be ad hoc issues based and also will operate in the short term, while strategic projects have a longer term view, are aspirational and require collaboration by the same group throughout the membership year. Forums are meant to deal in a responsive manner with issues as they arise and are open to all members. Strategic projects have a longer-term view, and although all members weigh in on selecting the projects, like when we sent out a survey earlier this year when we were determining which strategic projects would be launched for the 2015-2016 year. The strategic projects, unlike the forums, require additional funding, and so the companies that are willing to resource those projects sit on the project advisory committee. But in both cases, the CanSIA's president and CEO, as well as the board of directors, have final approval on any steps taken by CanSIA on behalf of a forum or a strategic project. So a complicated diagram should have just come up on your screen, and we've put this together to illustrate the relationships between the major components of CanSIA's structure. So essentially there are 5 components, which are members, the networks, the forums, the strategic projects, and then CanSIA's board, CEO, and executive team as one unit. There are some smaller boxes in the diagram with arrows on either side that show exactly how the different components relate. For instance, policy and research updates, member benefit updates, and general notices will continue to be communicated by CanSIA to all of our members, so that's shown in sort of the top right corner. Information from the networks will feed back to all members through these same channels, so you can see the arrow between the members and networks. Updates and issues resolutions will be communicated between the networks and the forum, so there will be communication there, and they'll benefit from each other's activities and context. And consultation requests will be made on occasion between strategic projects and networks so that they can benefit from each other's perspectives and activities. And it's also worth noting that when we're conducting sort of a broader consultation request on behalf of a strategic project to the membership, that request would go through a network. So if you want to be consulted as part of that process, then we definitely would encourage members to sign up for the networks of interest. And just to sum up with some next steps, an invitation is going to be sent to you and the rest of our contacts next Tuesday, and that will invite you to join one or more networks by completing a short online form. I should note that, in case it wasn't already clear, the networks and forums are restricted to CanSIA members, so if you're interested in these networks but you're not yet a member of CanSIA, I'd encourage you to review the membership information available on our website. And our most comprehensive information about membership can be found in our brochure, which is posted at the link on this slide. And also, if you have any questions or you want to talk about your company or organization's options for membership, please get in touch with me anytime at the coordinates on this slide.
Thank you very much, Lisa. That was a great overview. So at this point in time, we'll actually open up the call to questions. So there are instructions on the slide, which you should see on your screen at this point in time. And so you can just use the question and answer function on the webinar and type in your questions, and we'll be happy to answer those as well. So maybe to just start us off, John, I'll ask you a quick question here while people are thinking of their own question. Maybe just at a very high level, why are you excited about this new structure that CanSIA is putting together here? And what do you see as kind of the very key benefits that you think it'll deliver, not only for engaging members, but as outcomes for CanSIA?
Thanks, Wes. The reason that we decided to come up with a strengthened consultation and collaboration platform with members was because we recognized how quickly the sort of pressing needs of the industry are changing. And, you know, under the old structure of the caucuses and working groups, it was quite cumbersome to be reactive to changes and challenges and opportunities that were coming up. And there was quite a bit of redundancy in terms of the information that was being carried over in each of those caucuses and working groups. And so the feedback that we had from all of you, the membership, about participating in those is that it wasn't providing the best use of your time. So this has been an effort on our side to try to create networks which cater to the interests, the different interests of our various members, while having these very adaptable forums which can be initiated and then wound down when the issue is dealt with very quickly, and can be accompanied by a mechanism that allows members to be part of the ongoing network, but then assigning in and off of forums on an as-needed basis as the various issues that might be of interest to them are. So I think it's going to make a much better use of the time of our members, and it's at the same time going to give us the very focused input that we need as CanSIA staff to be able to call on you to get direction and make the best possibly informed decisions and policy papers, et cetera. So it's our hope that it's really going to be an effective way of using people's time and creating the best possible representations on these important issues for us.
Great, thank you very much, John. So we do have a few questions here. The first one I will take on. Someone has asked whether we can share this presentation with the participants on the call. It is our intention to share the presentation as well as the audio podcast at a later point in time. We will have a wrap-up email, which we will likely send around sometime early next week. So this presentation will be made available as well as the audio. So the next question, I'll direct it to Lisa. So the question is, how will general members be consulted on the setting of strategic projects for the next year? So Lisa, I'll ask you to address that.
Sure. So last year, we had a number of strategic projects in mind from conversations that we had you know, over a number of months with our members, and that really does influence you know, I guess the priorities that we hear about from our members are what influence us to determine that something is worthy of a strategic project. Those projects also get considered by our board of directors, and a survey was sent out last year in advance of choosing 4 out of the 8 strategic projects that we had in mind. So we intend to follow a similar process this year, since it worked well last year. When we introduced the strategic projects this year, we had very positive feedback from our members that they felt CanSIA was moving in the right direction in terms of our efforts, and there was a pretty good consensus from our membership in terms of which projects were a priority. So I think we'll continue with the same process this year, and I'd be happy to talk to anyone attending Solar Canada in December about what we're considering for next year and any ideas that you have.
And just to add to that as well, so throughout the year, CanSIA will continue to communicate the progress that is occurring throughout those strategics with the broader membership, and we intend to do that through the networks. So it's very important for the broader membership to sign up to each of those networks to ensure that you do get progress updates on what's going on in those projects. Next, John, I'll direct this one to you. The question is, what is your, and I assume you mean CanSIA's short-term plan? What are you trying to achieve in 5 years' time? And what are the challenges you are facing right now? So a few questions involved in that one. You can probably break that down a little bit with what are our short-term plans, what do we look to achieve over the next 5 years?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. You know, our priorities right now have to do with protecting and nurturing the Ontario market and ensuring that as we make this transition to a net metering world, which has been clearly signaled now, and there are regulatory and other consultations going on that are leading us down that path toward a net metering world. We have to ensure that we are dealing with knowing where the puck is going to be, what obstacles and preparations have to be made so that we have a sustainable net metering future ahead of us here in Ontario. So the short to medium term challenge here is for Ontario is protect and nurture this market, ensure that we've got a sustainable program that leads us to a net metering world. And by extension, we're working very hard with the Solar PV-DG Task Force to ensure that all of the preparations and information and research is delivered to the agencies and the ministry so that we've got a very effective environment to be working in when we hit that net metering world. We also have other short-term priorities that we've been working very hard on that have to do with opening other jurisdictions in Canada. We've built up a very strong industry here with very strong players represented by all of you, companies, individuals and companies that have been through, a sort of trial by fire in creating more than 2 gigawatts, installing more than 2 gigawatts of solar in Ontario, with some more to come, but recognizing that we need to get into other markets and use this expertise and your strength in other jurisdictions. So Alberta has been a very heavy focus of ours over the last several months in particular. We've been working on it for 2.5 years now, but this NDP government clearly presented the opportunity for us to help them develop a Made in Alberta solution, and we are on the cusp of having been instrumental in working with other industries like the wind industry, working with the government and the stakeholders in Alberta to get the broad strokes of the program out. We're going to see that early next week, as I said, and then the very hard work will begin of working on the details to make sure that the Alberta Made solution for and policy program for solar is one that allows us to deploy solar very cost effectively and in a very sustainable way. We've also been working on the Saskatchewan market, and you're seeing the results there. We're about to get into a new phase of detail. And I'd say another short-term opportunity has resulted because of the election of the federal Liberals. We are gearing up now to understand what sort of information and input we can give to this government to provide support for jurisdictions across Canada who want to bring in solar energy programs, and so that's factoring high on our agenda. In terms of the 5-year plan, the 5-year plan is pretty clearly laid out in our Roadmap 2020. It sets out not only the objectives that we have as an industry, but also the 5 areas of focus that we need to have to achieve this outcome. As I said in my introductory remarks, I think that we've got a shot of hitting all of those targets. They're aggressive, but through the hard work of CanSIA, the support of its members and its support of directors, I think we've been doing a very effective job at working towards those. And frankly, we've gotten pretty fortunate with the election, the changes in government in a couple of these jurisdictions and federally. That combined with this global context, I think is going to give us a real shot of having 6.3 gigawatts of installed capacity by the year 2020.
Thank you very much, John. So we have received a few questions asking for updates on the strategic projects themselves. We'll actually go over that information later on in the presentation, and another question related to the FIT program itself. So for the latter part of this presentation, we'll get more involved in the policy, regulatory, and communication matters, so we'll address a few of those questions at that point in time. Maybe 1 or 2 questions before we move on. One question here, why do forums dissolve as opposed to staying active like the old working groups? So I can start there, John, and others that can certainly feel free to step in there as well. The way that we've designed our forums, they're really meant to be reactive and ad hoc. So if there is an issue that we need to ensure is being dealt with, we can use forums in a very flexible and adaptive manner. But we also want to ensure that we're not wasting members' time. So if that issue is now dissolved, we want to dissolve the forum with that issue as well. So it's a way for us to try to optimize your time as members and also the time of the CanSIA team. As John mentioned, we're a small team, but we try to obviously be very productive at the same time. And one last question maybe before we move on. John, maybe I'll get you to start on this one. Patrick, maybe you can follow up a little bit on this. So the question is, similar to CanSIA and the U.S. Solar Energy Industry Association, is there a thought to track and show in detail the amount of solar power installed in Canada and future expected projects and capacity expected to be installed?
Thank you very much for the question. You know, things are changing quickly, and if you had asked me this same question just a few months ago, coming up with the answer to tracking and showing how much solar there was in Canada was a fairly easy task. We just had to look to the Ontario procurement programs and the ISO plans and reports. And in fact, we did do that, and because of our position on the International Energy Agency's Executive Committee for Solar PV, we've gone through a process each year of reporting how much solar has been deployed across Canada in each of the jurisdictions, but it's been at a very high level. Now I think there is every reason to look at implementing a solution like that is going to track and show in detail what sort of activity we're seeing in various jurisdictions. And I think that the timing is right now to do that with these provinces like Alberta, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick coming out with programs that we'll be able to that we should start tracking and reporting on the progress that's being made against the stated objectives. So thank you very much for that question and also the idea of adding more detail to how we're tracking. We're going to take that away and look at how we can accomplish that.
Thank you very much, John. So we'll actually move on to the next part of our presentation, and we will have another opportunity for participants to ask questions later on in the presentation as well, so we're looking forward to those. So at this point in time, the CanSIA expert team will now provide updates on the exciting activities and opportunities that are currently taking place through the new networks. So at this point in time, I will hand it over to Ben Weir, and Patrick and Lou Hood will also provide their relevant updates after that. Ben, over to you.
Thanks very much, Wes, and hi everybody who's on the call today. I'm going to be taking everyone through the Policy and Market Developments Network, which is the one that I'm going to be spearheading on behalf of the CanSIA team in conjunction with our board liaison, who will be Bonnie Hiltz from GDF Suez. So this group, as Lisa and John have already alluded to, is really going to be focusing on activities cross-jurisdictionally, so Canada-wide, that have to do with program development, policy development itself, electricity supply mix planning, any kind of procurement design that goes on, and interactions with the different ministries and agencies that handle any of those activities. What I'm going to do today is really try to provide some brief updates about not only the strategic projects that are going to be talked about in this network, but as well as some of the overarching, I guess, policy issues that would lead to the creation of specific forums in which members would be able to get involved depending on when those issues arose. So to start with, and focusing on Ontario for the first part of this presentation, we'll then move into Alberta as well as some federal initiatives. But starting in Ontario, as John's alluded to, really the central sort of theme of what policy development and market transition is going on here is what I would call a managed transition from a centralized procurement model through the LRP, FIT, and microfit programs into a customer-focused, more market-responsive net metering approach. CanSIA has been and will continue to be deeply engaged in both of the two central groups that I would say that are currently taking a look, analyzing, and helping to craft this transition. The first one that I'll talk about is the Ministry of Energy's Net Metering Self-Consumption Advisory Working Group. This group is looking specifically at the transition from microfit sized projects, so 10 kilowatts and down, into a net metering framework. CanSIA sits on that advisory working group, and we've already submitted our first round of feedback into the working group based on their policy proposal that they did some public engagement and stakeholdering on earlier in the fall. This currently, because we didn't have the networks and forums established yet, worked its way through our distributed generation task force in terms of discussing the issues and moving forward with a recommendation. Now that the forums and networks have officially kicked off, while it will continue to be discussed, certainly within the distributed generation task force, because there's a lot of inner ties there in terms of the goals of the groups, there will also be a forum that gets established so that we can essentially reinitiate having what used to be the microfit working group involved in this piece of the discussion. There's a lot of consultation still to go. There's still a draft or a final policy proposal that needs to get posted to the EBR probably early next year. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for interaction with a forum on this subject and ways for members to get involved. The second one is the strategic project, which is the Distributed Generation Task Force. So this group is more of an industry-led initiative, obviously, whereas the ministries group is government-led. And this one's dealing with basically all sizes of distributed generation. So we haven't limited ourselves to the 10 kilowatts framework that the ministry has. Our group is looking at the policy and regulatory environment that needs to exist in the, call it, late 2017 to early 2018 timeframe when the FIT and microfit programs end. And they're currently directed to have future rounds of procurement, but they are slated to end in that timeframe. And we want to make sure that everything that needs to be set up and existing for distributed generation to continue onwards after those centralized methods of procurement have ended are in place. And so this group, it's engaging heavily with the Ministry of Energy, quite obviously, but with the Ontario Energy Board, with the Independent Electricity System Operator, as well as a number of LDCs. We will be getting involved with the ESA as time goes on. The types of information that's going to filter down through the Distributed Generation Task Force into the Policy and Market Development Network will be updates, as Wes has said, as we've moved forward, but there will be specific points of consultation that we are interested in and what we would view as necessary as getting general membership feedback on. The graph that's on the slide 29 that you're looking at right now would be an example of that. Part of what the DGTF is going to be looking at and has been looking at is basically the ongoing cost duration forecasts for solar project development, what that looks like in terms of what policy support is necessary in order to facilitate project development. And while the research is being done and the analytics are being done within the DGTF, when we get to the point that we want to be making a recommendation and where we're putting forward essentially the lay of the land for the industry in Ontario, that needs to be shopped with general membership that's not part of the strategic project to make sure that we're giving it a sniff test for relevance for the rest of the industry. As well as, quite frankly, the identification of any fatal flaws that the strategic project hasn't thought of. So that'll be a piece of what the network is going to be doing with that particular strategic project. If we can advance to the next slide. Obviously, during the next 2 years, while the FIT, microfit, and LRP programs are ongoing, the network will be creating forums and will be communicating broadly on each of those procurement programs. So while there are certain aspects that will be taking a more forward-looking approach, that will need forums, that will need the strategic project that is the DGTF, certainly there will be a lot of forums dealing with price schedule, price reviews, any recommendations for program design, and then associated briefings. We're looking to get members of forums involved to a greater extent when we go in and actually talk to agencies and ministries about program design and implementation. The other one that's coming up relatively soon, I would imagine, in 2016 will be the stakeholdering for the LRP2, talking about things like how community engagement was conducted, what rated criteria will be available for use during the next procurement, and running off of what the minister has talked about in previous speeches and directives. Obviously, the incorporation of storage is going to be, or could be, very relevant. So striking forms to deal with all of those things combined, or possibly separate things depending on the level of technical detail we need to get into, is definitely going to be something that this network will be handling. The other one under fit and microfit that I want to touch on briefly and allow some time for question and answer afterwards is the new application timestamp process that was released by the IESO over the past couple of days. They've communicated out, obviously, that there was a technical glitch with how the timestamps were assigned, and we've been in communication with them since then directly, and we put out a communication, obviously, to membership, which talked about our, while certainly disappointed with the fact that the glitch occurred, our main focus here is to keep the procurement running on schedule and to maintain the integrity of the competitive aspects of the procurement. So while we share the dissatisfaction of what I imagine is all members, that the fact that this happened, our main concern here and our main priority is to keep everything running on schedule, which is why we are asking members to provide any feedback that they may have, and some have already started to do so, to myself. My email is bweir@cansia.ca, and we'll be communicating that directly to Ministry as well as the IESO, and we remain in pretty constant contact with both of those groups on this. So I'm happy to take any questions on that, but just as a brief overview of it, I have been assured that more communications are coming from the IESO, multiple rounds of communication as well, to try to make sure that all members and applicants writ large to the FIT program are aware of what the process is going to be, have more details on that, as well as just the fact that the process is happening, because obviously there's some pretty harsh consequences if someone doesn't participate in it and reapply for their timestamp. So we'll take questions on that at the end if there are any. You can go to the next slide, please. As John mentioned, climate change is becoming a big piece of the policy driver. So what this one piece of this network is going to be looking at, and we've established a strategic project for it as well, is cap and trade and climate strategy writ large. So we've established the Ontario Solar Climate Change Initiative, or the OSCCI, and it is looking at ways of supporting the implementation of climate policy, both the cap and trade mechanism as well as the action plans and strategy that are going to be coming out relatively soon. We've already gotten involved submitting a submission on the MOECC's GHG reporting regulation, and there's going to be a lot more points of interaction going forward. The MOECC recently released their preferred approach on cap and trade with feedback due in mid-December, and we're going to be using the OSCCI to submit into that process, and that will be one of those things as we come close to reaching a final recommendation on those policy aspects that we'll be circulating with memberships who have signed on to this network. The OSCCI is in the midst of their research agenda currently, and a lot of what's coming out of that process is going to factor into our work on the long-term energy plan as well, which I'll speak to now if we can go to the next slide. This will be a massive piece, quite frankly, of what this network is going to be doing, and likely multiple forums will be established to deal with different aspects of this. We're coming up to the end of the implementation of the 2013 LTEP and their commitment to procure 10,700 megawatts of non-hydro renewables, and they're expecting to meet that at the conclusion of the already committed and directed procurements through LRP, FIT, and microfit. So what this does is put us up at a little bit of a cliff face, if you want to call it that, that needs to be dealt with to make sure that we're taking advantage of any opportunities that are created by nuclear refurbishments, climate policy as it relates to if we're going to, and by we I mean, sorry, the Ontario government, if they're going to be recontracting for non-utility generators, gas plants. It also factors very much into the recently released Bill 135, which does a number of things, one of which, and probably the most exciting from our perspective, is the incorporation of climate policy into what electricity demand and electricity planning is going to be looking like over the next 3 to 4 years. So we will likely have a number of forums, like I said, established to deal with long-term energy planning in specific areas. And so I'm relatively excited about that one myself, and I would hope that there would be some good participation from membership in the forums on there. And as Lisa said, there's opportunities for members to chair those forums as well. So if there's any particular aspect of the long-term energy planning process that interests someone to a greater degree, hopefully we can get some good participation on that front. I believe I'm passing it over to Patrick Bateman at this point to speak to some developments in Alberta.
Great, thanks a lot, Ben. And thanks to everybody for participating in the webinar. So another area of activity for the Policy and Market Development Network will be the market of Alberta. As many of you will know, CanSIA has been very active in Alberta for the last decade and more. We've met with all of the 7 previous energy ministers. During this period, it was really characterized by a policy oversupply without any policy demand. There were a number of industry consultations, a lot of work being done within the departments on climate change and renewable energy, but it never really saw the light of day because the political will just wasn't present. So fast forward to 2015, May to be exact, and the election of Premier Notley and the NDP government has really been a game changer for the province. Premier Notley and the NDP ran on a commitment to phase out coal and accelerate renewables in the province, and since they've formed government, they have moved very aggressively toward that goal. There's been a very intense period of consultations and negotiations over the last few months. All industry stakeholders have been participating vigorously, and it's been a really very exciting time. Each participant trying to make the case for why they deserve a market share of the future electricity market. CanSIA, in participation in these consultations, partnered with CanSIA and other third-party advocates for renewable electricity, and put forward some very strong and well-rationalized recommendations to the government. Those recommendations included, or would give rise to somewhere in the region of 3.5 to 6 gigawatts of solar in the province by 2030. And just for some context, that would represent approximately 6% of total electricity in that year. Specifically, the policy recommendations included a renewable portfolio standard of 30 to 35% by 2030. That RPS would be implemented with central procurement of renewable energy certificates and or electricity, and also advocating for a time-limited carve-out for solar within that RPS. For distribution-connected projects, for smaller projects, residential through community, also advocating for the initialization of a standing offer program to replace the province's microgeneration regulation. And finally, we've also been advocating for improvements to the existing carbon pricing regime. We're quite excited to expect that next year we'll likely begin to hear some announcements out of Alberta in terms of what the future policy direction will look like, and we will certainly continue to engage and consult members on this topic through the Policy and Market Development Network. Specifically, in the near term, three key areas of consultation will circle around the pricing for the standard offer program, some specific program design elements for the standing offer program, and then also some program design elements for transmission connected solar once we understand a little bit more about what the policy proposal there will be. Another area of activity for the Policy and Market Development Network will be the federal government and federal policy. As we'll all know by now, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals won a very strong majority and have formed government. Their platform also included very strong commitments to climate change and to clean energy, and very specifically a number of detailed recommendations in terms of new funding and mechanisms that they would invest in clean energy technologies and companies. For the first time, the ministerial mandate letters were made public, as not been done before, by Prime Minister Trudeau to his 30 members of Cabinet. And those mandate letters provide direction on the approach that government's going to take in those areas, and also states the clear expectations that he has for his ministers. There's two key things to note there. The first one is that he's made clear that climate change is a key challenge and that every member of the Cabinet is responsible within their portfolio to ensure that they take steps to tackle climate change. And then the second keynote to make is that Minister Carr and Natural Resources Minister Carr and Finance Minister Bill Morneau have been instructed to work with the provinces and territories to make Canada the world's most competitive tax jurisdiction for investment in clean technology. Fortunately, CanSIA has been very active in the past looking at tax enablers and incentives at the federal level, and we've got a wealth of work to build off of from today. Some of those incentives and enablers are investment tax credits and accelerated depreciation. So we will be meeting with Natural Resources Canada later this month to begin to understand how the process for bringing renewables nationally will look like, and we will continue to engage and consult with members of the Policy and Market Development Network. Finally, the last update that we will give today on the Policy and Market Development Network is related to the campaign to open Canadian markets. This is a strategic project similar in form to the OSCCI and the DGTF that Ben had mentioned. This strategic project is driving the market development work outside of Ontario. By the end of this year, OCM participants will have been involved in detailed policy discussions, not only in Alberta and federally, but also in Saskatchewan, who John had mentioned yesterday announced their intent to go 50% renewable by 2030. Nova Scotia, who also this month released their new blueprint for the electricity sector, indicating a long-term shift to renewable energy and near-term funds for demonstration, pilot and community solar projects. New Brunswick, whose RPS is creating new opportunities for renewable energy projects at the community and First Nations levels, and BC, whose SOP is evolving and presents some potential opportunities for the solar industry moving forward. 2016 is going to be another very busy year for us all as existing opportunities develop and new opportunities emerge, and we're going to be engaging and consulting with our membership through the Policy and Market Development Network on these issues. Moving along, the next network to discuss today is the Utilities and Regulatory Affairs Network. This network is it's going to be a group of solar industry and electricity sector professionals who will collaborate, share knowledge, and manage issues for the solar industry. And the focus is really going to be helping both the solar industry and utilities to prepare for the solar future, to take the sting out of the learning curve and to make sure that deployment as it moves forward and as it grows is manageable and not curtailed on either side. The liaison for the Board of Directors will be Ivano Labricioso, and I, Patrick Bateman, will be the project manager. So the background for the Utilities and Regulatory Affairs Network is that we have always provided services to utilities and regulatory bodies who are managing issues related to solar and taking steps to prepare for the future. And this network is going to build the community and formalize the process for doing this in future. A large part of the focus is going to be around sharing knowledge and best practices between the industry and utility regulators and backing it. And I'm very excited to tell everybody that the first key steps that we're going to be taking with this network are going to be at Solar Canada 2015. We have an unprecedented number of international experts from the International Energy Agency's PVPS Task 14 coming to participate in the Commons. It's an extremely impressive lineup, I have to say, representing several European countries, the US, Japan, Singapore, and elsewhere. And we'll be bringing those international experts together with Canadian industry leaders and experts as well. Some of the topics that will be discussed are going to be an individual from Fraunhofer talking about how Germany manages the grid, where they've got 38 gigawatts of distribution-connected solar, of which about 80% is distribution-connected. So some great learnings for Canada from there. Also, Japan will have an individual from the University of Tokyo talking about how they manage variable generation on Japan's transmission system. and also international experts about what technology we can expect to come with smart inverters, what the benefits that they provide are, and what the challenges for integration of those technologies will be. So another example of the activities that will be discussed in the Utilities and Regulatory Affairs Network will be regulatory reform and rate design. And I'm going to pass it back to Ben to discuss this topic further.
Thanks, Patrick. I'll try to do this quickly because I know we're running out of time here, and I want to make sure that Lou has sufficient time to talk about the communications network and have some time for questions that I see are rolling in here. So basically what I'll say is that this network and the forums created thereunder are going to be really effective, and we've already started doing this to a certain extent, of getting involved with the Ontario Energy Board. This is an Ontario one specifically that I'm going to be speaking about, but certainly with regulators in other provinces as that become more active in those provinces, as well as directly with utilities, to make sure that as rate designs are evolving, that the solar industry's perspective on what is going to be most effective for those rates to end up as is being heard by the regulator. I'm not sure if it's something that's been communicated on a broad level or strongly to the Ontario regulator anyway in the past, and it's something that we want to become more involved in. We've already done so on the residential customer rate design process that the OEB concluded in April of this year, and we have got on as an intervener in the commercial and industrial rate design process. The effects of the residential one, while not exactly what was recommended by CanSIA in terms of how a distribution charge was fixed on a residential bill, was still, in our view, positive in that the revenue essentially of the LDC was secured against what it would have been otherwise, which really removes a lot of the disincentive for LDCs that existed from the expansion of distributed generation that was then eating into profit margins essentially for LDCs. Now the OEB is turning to the commercial and industrial rate design process. That process kicked off in May of this year, and we're waiting on the staff report to the board, which will include some options and different things that they're looking at implementing. But I think it's safe to say that there's likely going to be a greater portion of distribution charges for commercial and industrial customers that are going to be fixed going forward, which carries a lot of the same benefits and a lot of the same challenges as what happened on the residential side of things. But what is going to be important from our perspective is making sure that the rate design has room for people to install distributed generation behind the meter specifically, and have that reduced amount of monthly energy usage as well as necessary capacity to support their load factored into what it is that they pay for distribution charges, to create as much of an incentive as possible and reasonable for people to install solar behind the meter. So I'll pass it, I believe I'll pass it off to Lou at this point to take us through the next network, which is the communications network. Lou?
Thanks, Ben, and thanks again for joining us this afternoon. The communications network, like the other networks, will be comprised of professionals from our member companies. These will be self-selected communications professionals. That's to say that not everyone will work in a communications function in their daily capacity, but will have an interest in communications and public engagement on behalf of their company. The network will work collaboratively in support of the other networks. So a lot of the forums that will be struck could be struck from between two networks, and work on an ad hoc basis on issues management, on reactive media relations, earned media, industry media relations, and on content development and key messages and op-eds and the like. This upsurge in interest in communications from CanSIA is a reaction to the Roadmap 2020. As John alluded to, there were 5 strategic actions that came out of the Roadmap 2020, and a heightened interest in communications and public engagement was one key action area for the association. So we plan on establishing and harnessing a network of communications professionals from across the membership that will further the association's objectives to share the message of Canada's clean energy future through solar. Communication is going to play a large role within CanSIA's new networks and forums, and communications professionals will collaborate on solar energy issues identification and management and work directly with the Policy and Market Development Network, and the Utility and Regulatory Affairs Networks in their work. By way of illustration, some recent successes that CanSIA has had in their media relations. There are a number of great media hits on earned media, including a large piece on solar leadership in this month's issue of Sustainable Business Magazine, a number of op-eds in the Calgary Herald and Edmonton Journal, and also a renewed and strengthened relationship with the Globe and Mail, reporting on association affairs and solar industry issues. If you're interested in looking more in depth at these, CanSIA.ca have a tab, CanSIA in the News, where you'll have links and access to all of the recent publications that have carried CanSIA messaging. We've also engaged in reactive media relations, answering letters to the editor and providing responses to media, unfavorable media coverage that didn't provide necessarily the fair and full perspective on the story. And we're engaged very closely with the media now in providing a two-way channel of communication, and have had a great deal of input into media stories that needed a solar perspective. Some of the activities that will be upcoming in the early days of the Communications Network will include building a reactive media relations plans to prepare for media interest in certain stories. These would include solar NIMBYism, solar public policy, including procurement programs and the Ontario transition to net metering, the opening of new Canadian markets for solar, and in our recent public polling work, we've noted in Alberta and Ontario there are some perceptual gaps with respect to solar in terms of the cost of solar, solar reliability, and solar's impacts on the economy and the new green economy. As I mentioned, we do public polling from time to time in support of them to advance our advocacy activities. Recent polling in Alberta revealed that 66% of Albertans support stronger climate change policy and 69% support accelerating the phase-out of coal. And further, 71% support the provincial government taking action to expand the production of renewable energy as a part of their climate change plan. What these polls do is provide the space the government needs to build policy and programs that support the adoption of renewables in the province. And future polling work will be undertaken using the opinions and expertise of the members of the Communications Network. By way of illustration, some recent work in Alberta that John and Patrick have alluded to, CanSIA partnered with CanWIA, as mentioned, in providing recommendations to the LEACH panel of the Climate Advisory Panel. And since that time, we've been focused on providing additional media support and ground cover for positioning the solar industry as a visible and credible option to provide reliable, cost-effective, emissions-free electricity while generating significant economic development. And we've also been involved in mobilizing supporters for renewable electricity by providing them a mechanism to offer their supportive voice to elected officials and the general public to provide a positive balance to the public discourse. Some of this recent work included a social media campaign on Facebook and Twitter, as well as sponsored ads. In the last few weeks, as early as this week on Monday, our total campaign impressions have come close to 3 million, and we've had almost 16,000 clicks through our ads to the Friends of Wind and Solar page, where respondents are guided to distribute a letter to their local MLA. We've also had an op-ed in the Edmonton Journal written by both John Gorman of CanSIA and CanWIA's Robert Hornan that took on directly the issue of the cost of wind and solar. And additional op-eds are being produced to follow the Alberta government's announcement next week with a focus on investment in renewables in the province. So with that, I'll turn things back over to Wes to manage our question and answer period.
Great, thank you very much, Lou, and thank you to Ben and Patrick as well. Those were great updates. So we do have a few minutes here for questions. So again, you can follow the instructions that are on the screen, and we do have a few questions from our previous Q&A session as well, and a few new ones here too. So maybe for the first question, John, I'll direct it to you, but also Ben, I may get you to provide some additional perspective there as well. John, the question is related to the FIT program itself. The question is, will the FIT program continue, and will it continue to be relevant?
Thank you for the question. So I believe that the FIT program will continue. However, now that the government has clearly indicated that we are moving to a net metering world, the question becomes how much longer, so over what period of time, will they continue to offer the FIT program as we move toward that net metering world? There is a lot of pressure, as all of us are aware, on getting the price of solar electricity in the province, particularly with the commercial rooftop space, down as quickly as possible. And I think our best strategy going forward is to be focused very heavily on a range of options that are going to get us to that net metering future in a very expeditious way, but one obviously that continues to provide a level of support that the industry needs. And so we are in discussions now with the ministry and the agencies to look at that pathway to getting towards net metering, and the changes that we can make to the subsequent FIT procurements to streamline them and get the prices down as quickly as possible. So as you've heard, we have an entire strategic initiative that is focused on those types of changes and getting the industry and all of Ontario to that net metering future that we all want. The emphasis is very much on doing it in a way that's sustainable for the industry, but at the same time we are working collaboratively and in a very flexible and open way to look at all sorts of solutions that can be applied to the FIT program as we make our way to that net metering world. So I hope that answers your question.
Great, I think that's good. And Ben, maybe I'll direct a different question your way. So another question that we got earlier, can you elaborate on the incorporation of storage into LRP2, and what might that look like?
Sure, thanks, Wes. So when the original LRP1 was launched, it was incorporated, or had the idea that it was going to at least allow for the incorporation of storage into any one of the projects. The evaluation model that ended up being created, well, certainly allowed, and there wasn't restrictions against having storage installed, didn't necessarily compensate a generator for its incorporation. You're paid based on what you bid, and the incorporation of storage, at least at prices that existed for utility scale or larger commercial scale storage at the time, would have essentially messed with the economics, and I don't think it would have been competitive, and that's why nobody bid it. The Minister of Energy has signaled directly to the ISO, as well as through public speaking engagements, that it's a very real possibility that storage gets incorporated into the LRP2. What it's going to look like is I think anyone's guess at this point, which is why we want to make sure that the forum that gets created to deal with the LRP2 stakeholdering has people who have, one, experience with storage, and two, experience with large-scale utility solar procurements and projects, because I think we have an opportunity here to set the stage a little bit for what does make sense, because I don't think anybody has any pre-baked ideas of what this looks like. We all have ideas, certainly, and I think the ISO has its own ideas, but I think they would also be the first ones to tell you that it's not necessarily a storage project co-located with a solar project or a wind project or whatever that makes the most sense. So we have to think through that to come up with what we think the best way to incorporate or not incorporate, quite frankly, if that's the recommendation. But I think the stage is a little bit open and the slate is relatively blank at this point, provided we get in early and have our ducks in a row to engage with the ISO when they start that stakeholdering process.
Great. Thank you very much, Ben. And maybe another question related to solar. I might direct this one your way, John. Currently, solar storage is not applicable within the microfit or FIT program at this point in time in Ontario. Maybe looking at it from a broader perspective, however, what do you see and what are you hearing in regards to the role that storage will play more on the distributed generation side of things for solar in the province of Ontario, but also I would say across Canada as well?
Thank you for the question. There's absolutely no doubt that storage technology and the potential that it has for smart distributed grids and an answer to intermittency for technologies like solar is a very hot topic and discussion. A very sexy technology that's getting a lot of airtime in government decision makers' discussions around what to do with the future of electricity. So there's a great deal of attention on storage. We're seeing a number of pilot programs leaping up all over the place, and we've seen the entry now of certified storage products for distributed generation in the market. And this is something that CanSIA has been looking at very closely, particularly at the level of commercial and residential rooftop solar, and the way that this is going to be able to empower people to not only generate electricity but be able to store and manage it and complete that circle of a really empowered consumer who's got control over all aspects of their electricity use while interacting with utilities to in a smart way to be able to create this more distributed, more resilient grid. So given a lot of the pricing indicators that are coming out of the storage industry, which on this scale, I'm just talking about distributed now, and looking at some of the cost curves, they closely parallel, what has been happening in the cost of solar electricity, although a few years behind us. And there are projections that show that in the sort of 4- and 5-year time frame, these things are going to be economically advantaged for people to be combining solar plus storage. So we're following that very closely, and we have begun some collaborations with players from the storage industry, including representations that we're making to the provincial government here in Ontario regarding what that future of solar plus storage has to offer. So yes, I think it's going to have a significant impact on our industry. It's an enabling technology for solar, and it's creating new opportunities for us to be part of a bigger electricity solution than simply generation.
Great. Thank you very much, John. So we have time for one more question, and Lou, I will direct this one to you. Question is, can you describe the difference in social media advocacy for the CanSIA policy positions as opposed to setting/maintaining a positive tone for solar?
Well, I think they both go hand in hand, but our fundamental objective in terms of the CanSIA policy positions is to make space for the government to heighten their investment in renewables, and by creating positive conversation, positive for solar, we're making the space for the government to go ahead and announce initiatives. One of the things that we learned from our public polling is that there are certain attributes of solar that are considered to be the Achilles heel. Those relate to the cost of solar, to solar reliability, and to the economic impacts of solar. And so our social media activities have been working to position solar against those negative perceptions to build a more positive tone for solar in the broader conversation.
To allow those to do more at the policy level then as well.
That's right.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lou. So that's all the time that we do have for questions at this point in time. However, if you do have additional questions, please feel free to send them, and we will provide you with email answers. At this point in time, I will hand it over to John to provide some remarks.
Thank you, Wes. Well, let me just say thank you once again for joining us today and listening to our proposal here and receiving the update. We're looking forward to your feedback after this webinar, your comments, which we will incorporate, look at and incorporate into how we're moving forwards here with the networks and forums. Please do take a moment to sign up to the networks, and there's literature there that enables you to sort of recap which areas that you're most interested in if you're going to sign up for one or all three of them. We'll be in touch soon with consulting about forums, suggesting forums will be established. Two other points to mention to you, just a reminder that voting for the new board members, and there are 5 openings this year, ends this Monday, November 23rd at 5 p.m. Electronic voting, you can find the information through the email blasts or on the website to do that. And lastly, we're expecting a great turnout at Solar Canada on December 7th and 8th of this year as usual at the MTCC in Toronto. We've got a terrific conference programming lineup and a great set of speakers. There's going to be a ton to speak about and share information about now that we see what's unrolling in not only in Ontario but in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and the opportunities that are developing at the federal level. That's really the focus of our conference this year. So we'll look forward to seeing you on December 7th and 8th, and thanks again for joining me.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you again to everyone on the phone and on your computers for joining us here today. We hope that you did find the webinar informative and helpful. We will now be ending the webinar, and we hope that you have a great day.